Good morning, everyone. It is the 3rd of November, just after 9 o'clock, and we're here for the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board meeting. Pursuant to the passage of legislation extending the COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, this meeting will be closed to the public. However, alternative public access has been provided via the advertised link. Please note that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, I, as the chair, must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting, and if so, please make their presence known. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call to order. Laura Shufelt.
Here.
Wendy Northcross.
Here.
Mark Milne.
Present.
Andy Clyburn here. I'll chair this morning's meeting. Manager Els won't be with us. Okay, with that, we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any members of the public with us this morning who would like to make comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll jump right into the topics for discussion. Our first item is the approval of the minutes from the November 13th, 2023 trust meeting. Wendy, I think you had a comment?
Yes, I'll move the minutes with a change. I want Laura to verify it though. And I'm sorry, I don't have the minutes in front of me, but way down near the bottom, when Laura made a comment and it came through with a double negative in the minutes, and I think it's not what she meant, but she said she would not be surprised if Jake Dewey could not get luxury rents in the neighborhood. I think she meant she would be surprised or he would not be able to get luxury rents. I just wanted to clarify that for the minutes because I think that's not what she meant.
Thanks, Wendy.
Right.
Laura, do you want to state what you
that I would be surprised if he could get market rents in that location.
excellent. Ellen, do you have that? Okay. So I have a motion to approve with that change. A second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Laura Shufelt.
Yes.
Wendy Northcross.
Yes.
Mark Milne.
Yes.
Andy Clyburn, yes. Okay, let's jump into item number 2 this morning. Standard Holdings, Tim Tillman and David Lawler. We have a request to lender Fall River 5 to defer loan principal payments on a loan at the residence of 850 Falmouth Road and a letter of intent for 199 Barnstable Road for a new development funding application. Mr. Lawler, you going to take this one?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, even though everybody said hello. David Lawler for the record. With respect to 850, it's a request is that the bank has the ability to, for another 6 months, based upon development costs, go to interest-only payments. And we just need the assent because there's some mortgage documents on record ahead of the bank with respect to this application. All it does is my client is nothing changes. They're just going to pay interest only for 6 more months, and then work with the bank. This it's a very simple request. If there's any questions or other issues, I don't think there's any ramifications to the town. And after that vote, I do want to get into something else about 850 as kind of a precursor of what we're intending to do, because I don't ever want to surprise this board with anything. So I don't know if you want to vote on that, and then I'll address the other issue, or how you want to handle it, Andy.
Sounds good. Thank you for that. We'll ask for any trust members' comments or questions on item A, which is the request to the lender. Laura, please.
We haven't got at least it hasn't come to the trust, a report or a accounting of the units that the affordable units that were rented, as to the eligibility. And I would be reluctant to vote on anything. It's been a while since that happened. We're supposed to get a report showing that they were eligible, the results of the lottery, the reasons folks were not deemed eligible, not total details on who people are, but the raw numbers. So I've been looking for that, haven't heard that we've got anything. And considering, how flawed the process was, not having anything raises questions.
I can, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, my understanding is that we have fulfilled everything with the requirement. If we have to get a report in, we can get that in ASAP. However, all the affordable, and Tim, correct me.
David, just let me
Yeah.
clarify. I'm Jillian. She was part of this conversation the past few days. Laura's correct that there's a final report that needs to come out regarding there were 28 eligible applicants, and as of probably 6 weeks ago, 9 of the 10 affordable units were occupied, and the 10th unit, they had a tenant, but after they were approved and directed to move in prior to signing a lease, they went quiet for 4 to 5 weeks. So as of this week, we are at the direction of Paula Stewart, who ran this challenging process. I believe we have a few applicants left to return to fill that last unit, because I was going to contact Barnstable Housing Authority, and when I requested the final report Laura is looking for to come from Paula this week, she said she can't or doesn't complete it until that 10th unit is full, and she asked me not to go to BHA and go to these last 3 tenants who were qualified one bedroom units. Now they can be accepted into the last 2-bedroom unit because we have exhausted the rest of the list. So that's where we are. That report is forthcoming. As Laura indicated, this has been a very challenging process in and of itself. So we have addressed what she's looking for, and it's coming shortly. That last unit should be full. I mean, we're disappointed it's not full, and it should be occupied, in short order here.
Thank you. Just for the record, could you identify yourself? You kind of jumped right in there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tim Tellman, one of the developers of Standard Holdings and Residence at 850.
Great, thank you. I'll go back to Laura, please.
Sorry, I don't want to hijack this, but a household is not eligible for a 2-bedroom cannot rent a 2-bedroom. You have to have someone who needs both bedrooms. So they can't go back to the 1-bedroom list to fill the unit.
Okay. Jillian, did you have any comment on this matter?
I will have to report that statement back to Paula Stewart, because she was under the impression that we have to return to the list because the people who were pre-qualified and through the lottery selected. But I'll talk with her about that. That could be a bit of a complication then.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have 9 of the 10 filled. We're not going to get a report until the 10th is filled. From a timing perspective, I guess I'll ask you, Mr. Lawler, how quickly do you need the approval?
We'd ask that it be approved at this meeting. I mean, the thing about it is this: it doesn't affect the town one bit. I mean, this is just allows my clients to go from paying interest in principal to paying interest for 6 months. If you look at one of the other things I was going to talk about, and obviously this report has to get in, and I apologize. I've been offline on this project since we got it approved. I was unaware of that document had not been sent. That's my fault. I should have asked that question. Now, with respect to the whole process, when this was negotiated extensively with Attorney McLaughlin and myself back and forth in the board and numerous meetings and whatnot. And the biggest concern then about the protection of this document, of this mortgage, whatever. And, Charlie referred to it as the critical period. And the critical period was during construction up until we complied with everything I mean, substantially everything that would in any way jeopardize the town's investment of this of these monies. And that investment, was a great investment, and we thank, and very appreciative of those monies. And sometimes in these projects, that's why they're there, because these projects can't, get off without some type of subsidies from the state and then tax benefits. So what has happened is that the town is no longer in risk virtually of anything. Construction's done. The building is built. It's virtually 100% occupied. I think there's a couple of vacancies out of the units.
The only vacancy is that one.
The only
Affordable
vacancy is
trying to
that
fill.
one. We have one, and that would have been fulfilled, but there seemed to be a bit of a snafu. So with respect to this situation, we would ask that this board approve this because it allows my client, some flexibility. And that's the other thing. I mean, I'll talk about it later, but everything the town that Attorney McLaughlin was concerned about, but this one unit, okay? All the 10 affordables through the agreement is recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So those are deed protected in perpetuity in accordance with the agreement. All the construction's done. We have all our final approvals. We have everything. We have delivered what we were asked to deliver, but for this one report. Now I know, it's not finished until it's finished, but of all the things that potentially could happen in this situation, everything is complete, but just basically dotting the last I and crossing the last T. And obviously that has to be done and will be done. And when those are done, that would be my second request. But so we would ask that the board vote on this. There's no downside to the town. There's no reason to suspect that we're not going to fulfill our obligations and get you the report. The reason is very simple, is that we had a candidate who was acceptable and for whatever reason has decided not to rent the unit, whether they moved or something in people's lives. Things happen, and I have no idea what happened in their lives, but they decided that obviously that they no longer want this. So that's the situation. So we would ask that this be approved at this meeting.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I have one comment. I would just, for the purpose of the board, I would like.
Mr. Tillman, if you could, just for the rest of the meeting, wait until I acknowledge you, just so we don't talk over each other.
Certainly,
Please, go ahead.
for the purpose of the board, I would just want that everyone to know that I speak regularly with Jillian Douglas in regards to making sure that this project in all ways, in every respect, is being done appropriately, expeditiously, and it's a challenge. And her guidance has been horrific, and she can attest, I would assume and hope that that those statements I've just made are true and accurate. That we want these units filled as well. We want these reports completed, and I would imagine she can attest to that.
Okay, thank you for that. Wendy?
I would like to move that we grant the request for interest, to approve the ask for interest-only payments be enabled by the developer to his bank.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a first and a second. We'll take a roll call vote. Laura Schufelt.
Yes.
Wendy Northcross.
Yes.
Mark Mel.
Yes.
Andy Clyburn, yes. Okay, we have our vote for Part A. Should Attorney Lawler, you mentioned you wanted to give more information on the 850 project. Do you want to do that now, or do you prefer to move into the discussion on 199 Barnstable Road?
Thank you. And why don't we stick with 850? Just briefly. So again, and I have, yesterday went back and looked at some of my emails with Charlie and everything like that. And I just want to give a heads up at some point down the road, certainly when this report is complete and been reviewed by the town, and and if there's any questions with the report, those are dealt with. We intend to come back and request that the mortgage be removed from the property. We had those conversations in the beginning that the intent of this, because it's not a loan, it's a grant. And the grant's been given, the money's been obtained, and all the benefits of the town will have been obtained, and would be no recourse because you have a fully operational, fully occupied building, allows us to refinance. We had these conversations way back when, that this was put in place really to protect the town. And I'm not asking for comment. I'm just throwing it out there, what we're going to be coming with. And I wanted to do it on the record. I wanted to be fully transparent. I don't want to surprise anybody, but I believe, and I'll, talk to, some people offline, but that, our request is, once we're finished, and that's what this intent is. And it's and I keep talking about it, but it's such a great program for these developers, and to allow for housing in Barnstable, which is so desperately needed and unfortunately under attack nowadays, that it's a great program. But this then allows the developer to move forward, whether to refinance or to, whatever whatever a developer does. But the bottom line is, this building is done. It's here for a very long time. It's beautiful. I don't know if anybody's come by and seen it since it's been finished, but would always welcome anyone. And that's going to be the request. And I'll stop at that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't want to dive too deep. It's not posted on the agenda.
Yeah.
I appreciate your transparency and giving us a heads up that may be a forthcoming discussion. So with that, I'll go ahead. Did we have any further discussion on the item that's already been voted? Okay, we'll move on to part 2, a letter of intent for 199 Barnstable Road, new development funding application. Jillian, do you want to tee this up, or are you going to go to Mr. Tillman?
I think in the packet I had included Tim's letter of intent, and it's I will allow him to introduce it if he'd like, or I can continue on. Tim, could you?
I'm sorry. Go. Laura had her hand up. Laura.
As I read this is a letter of intent for HDIP, not for trust funding.
If I could, it's the Housing Development Incentive Program, the tax incentive, tax increment exemption, and then also there will be a request for funding from the trust for gap funding of units.
So it's not a formal request at this point. This is more of an informative letter of intent to put it on our radar. Am I oversimplifying that enough? Okay.
I feel that categorizes it, yes.
Jillian, how about if we let the proponent tee it up for us?
Sounds good.
Please,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Tillman.
I'm going to have Tim tee this one up, and not myself.
Sure. This proposed project is on Barnstable Road at 199, which is the site of the current Sprinkle Home Improvements. And our proposal is to put up 45 one-bedroom units spread across, because of the uniqueness of the property, spread across 4 buildings, 3 stories high, looking like row houses. We did meet with planning on last Thursday and received positive feedback. And I believe, with one small exception, which we may get by, will fit completely with the new form-based zoning that has been put forth by the town. So we are waiting for our last round of build construction numbers to come in, and we'll have an application into the trust, most likely for the December 3rd meeting for initial review.
Thank you very much for putting that on our radar. Do we have any, actually, I have a question. Do we have any idea what the funding request will be for that may be coming in that December application?
It will be, so if in the letter, under this, the arrangement, we would be required to have 5 affordable units. We will propose 9, leaving it at 20%, which then would leave the market rate percentage at 80. So we are eligible for HDIP. But on those 9 units, we would be requesting in the neighborhood of, I'm still modeling this, $1.5 million.
Okay. So just to clarify, your letter says that the units will be, include 10 to 20 deed restricted affordable? Are you
10 to
saying, now saying
20%.
that number is actually gonna be 9?
I think
Well,
that's,
10 to,
yeah, 10, his breaking up. I think that was 10%.
Oh, okay.
yes.
All right, well, we look forward to that application. Do we have any other questions, at this point? Laura?
Just to clarify, 5 are required under inclusionary, so really you're asking for 1.5 million for 4 units.
Okay. Mark Milne?
Yes, I read that the same way, Andy, in the third paragraph of the letter of intent, it says all rental units, including 10 to 20 units, deed restricted affordable. Is that a misprint?
As I understood from my meeting with planning, that at 80, the first 5 units would be inclusionary at 65% AMI. And the next 4 would also be inclusionary at 80, if they were at 80% AMI. That was my understanding from our meeting on Thursday.
Yeah, again, that doesn't really address the letter of October 26th, where it states 10 to 20 deed restricted affordable. Is that a misprint?
It should be 10 to 20%. I'm sorry, maybe I had a misprint. 10% would be 5
clearly
units.
says 10 to 20 units, not 10 to 20%. So. Just so
I
you
haven't seen the application, but knowing Andy and Mark, you guys are pretty accurate people. It has to have been a misprint.
Fair enough.
We acknowledge, and we will send in a revised letter correcting that issue.
Okay. Mark, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, on your application that comes forward, you anticipate December 3rd, I think you said. Will that also include what you're projected to request for a tie as well? Because it would be helpful to this board to see the total request coming forward, including trust funding as well as tie funding.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Jillian?
A comment, just that the December meeting is December 1st. So that if the application came in after that, it would probably not normally be heard until January.
Okay, thank you for that.
And how much time do you need prior to a meeting for an application? Is there you don't want to, obviously it can't be that same day, so we want to make sure.
We prefer not.
Is there a
being
standard?
updated.
Is there a standard like there is with zoning and things like that, or is it just?
10 days allows time to circulate and
Okay.
and post them.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this item? David, Tim, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Everybody, thank you so much.
With that, we'll move on to item number 3 on today's agenda, planning and development updates. Elizabeth.
Good morning. Thank you, Assistant Town Manager Clyburn. I have no significant updates. I think since the last time we met, we did have a review committee meet on the town-owned property at 164 Route 149 and came up with a consensus recommendation on award of that RFP to the applicant. I also spoke at the Housing to Protect Cape Cod Summit on the new form-based zoning and made a number of great connections with other communities who are regionally interested in zoning solutions to their housing challenges. So it was a good experience overall. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for last night as well on those at town council. That's great. Any questions for Elizabeth? Laura.
Elizabeth, I've been seeing in the newspaper and other things that the old TD Bank building are proposing, and I don't know whether this is the appropriate time, but are proposing deed restrictions of less than perpetuity, 30 or 40 years. And obviously that doesn't meet our inclusionary requirements. And I'm wondering who is overseeing that and where they need to get approval for that, because it would be a waiver from our ordinance.
Yeah, I have not seen that. I know they are seeking to deed restrict units in excess of our inclusionary. And in all conversations, my understanding is they fully understand that our inclusionary units have to be those LIP eligible deed restriction. But I'll certainly go back and take a look at that and make sure that we communicate those requirements to the developer.
Also, they said that they were going to be, one section of the building was going to be for the affordables. That kind of raised red flags. They've kind of been known for doing the pour door with one entrance for the markets and one entrance for the affordables and separating them. That obviously is not in keeping with the policy of inclusionary.
Yeah, again, they haven't filed their LIP application yet. So when they have that, we will conduct all those customary reviews.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Any other questions for Elizabeth this morning? All right, thanks again, Elizabeth. We'll move on to item number 4, trust administrators updates and follow-ups. Jillian.
Well, in the packet, with respect to the notice of funding availability, I had simply taken a first draft to make revisions that would allow for programs to be included. And basically my changes were in red, and then I had highlighted in yellow just some of the discretionary pieces that the trust might want to talk further about. The eligible activities and the amounts that we would be allocating, as well as the caps that we have talked about. So I didn't know if anybody had comments directly from review of that, or if you want me to go through. I mean, I can highlight the areas that need your input, if you'd like, or I could.
I personally just going through and asking those questions. Does that make sense to the rest of the board members? If Jillian just goes through, yeah. Please, if we have time, let's do that.
Okay,
Jillian.
I'll try to be fairly quickly. The first one is on page 2 of the NOFA under the eligible activities. We talk about the amount that we would be setting aside for community housing needs. This would be supplementing our current balances. The amount that had been in the last NOFA was it was over 2 million, and so I had simply just put in the 2.5 that we currently have that was approved by the CPC for transfer. I didn't know if people had any comments about that, and I have not. Mark Milne, I have not really spoken about this, nor Elizabeth and I. We just.
So you're out on a limb. Jillian.
Well, I'm just throwing these numbers out, so.
That's a rookie mistake.
Yeah, and just a note, that 2.5 is not yet available for the trust. It still has to be appropriated by the council. It is on the agenda for November 16th.
Yeah. So we likely shouldn't vote on that at this meeting.
Oh, and I actually was not thinking you would vote on these tonight. I was thinking this would be more discussion, though.
I think that's great if we put it on our radar. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Mark, you had your hand up.
No, I think Elizabeth just made the point I was going to. There's even 30-day waiting period after they vote it before it becomes available to the trust.
So we're probably, whatever we discuss here, we could vote right after the
Just
new
to
year.
thank you.
Probably likely, but it's still worth just since we're here and we're in public, let folks know what we're looking at. If you don't mind going through real quickly.
Yeah, so the other primary piece under the pre-development activities, we had in our previous NOFA noted that recipients of pre-development funds may pay vendors first and then submit copies of paid invoices for reimbursement. I assume that's still consistently okay, but people might want to think a little bit about how that process would work.
Laura?
We're obligated to do that.
Okay.
So that's not, if I can go back up, I'm not sure what forecasting, fair marketing, and monitoring compliance means.
What Laura's
It's in the first
referring.
paragraph.
yeah, under pre-development activities, I'll read the full paragraph. It says funds will be available for pre-development work to determine the viability of residential development on a particular site, whether the site is vacant or developed. Funds will be made available for costs related to architect, engineering, and consulting fees. And what I had inserted and consulting fees. And then I had also added for forecasting, fair market, and monitoring compliance. And the reason I had included that is because we had run into concerns from applicants previously. Actually, I gather this might have predated me, but the folks that were concerned that they might not have the cost for the full fair marketing and monitoring in their pro forma, they were looking for supplemental money toward that. In other words, it was a compliance piece that they're looking for. And I guess what there were a few, I guess, a project previously where it would have been beneficial for a person to apply for those funds right up front.
Yeah,
So
I think you explained it fine, and as we deliver it in the future meetings on it, I don't want to get too bogged down on any
No.
item. But that'll be on, that's one
The
of
wordsmith
several that we'll be looking at, yeah.
And I had also added the wording that the funding would be available for pro forma projections as well, if that was needed as part of the pre-development.
Okay.
Let's see then further again, the amount that you wanted to apply towards pre-development. Previously, you had put 200,000 toward that. But that's more like a budgeting question as to how much you want to allocate.
Yep.
For evaluation criteria, I had included evidence of internal capacity to monitor and produce. This has to do with the evaluation of proposals or applications. Evidence of internal capacity to monitor and produce periodic reports or evidence identifying and ensuring the availability of certified professional responsible for affordability, compliance, monitoring, and fair marketing. So that was the piece where we needed to know upfront that we had capable folks that would be monitoring into the future. So I had included that. Any comments, questions? Keep going.
Yeah, I would say.
Okay, then under development activities, I had added the words demonstrated shortfall so that in your project eligibility, you would be looking at a pro forma that would show a shortfall, not just imply. Let's see, I had changed the words for the EOCD to Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. Again, on the fourth page, we were talking about the maximum amount of funding. That cap under pre-development had been 75 per unit. I'm sorry, under development had been 75,000 per unit. I'm suggesting that in light of market circumstances, you may wish to go up on that.
Okay, Jillian, Laura had her hand up.
I was just gonna say, well, I'm sure we'll discuss this further, but 200,000 is too much in my opinion, and I can back it up.
Okay. Jillian?
I'm making that note, thank you. And then the amount per unit, I'm sorry, per project, I had suggested an increase there. And again, I'm sure we'll have further conversation about that.
I'm sure we'll have a robust discussion on that, yes.
Okay, very good. I had added, let's see, I'll read the entire sentence. Where an applicant is converting an existing vacant market rate unit into an affordable rental unit, a successful applicant may also seek reimbursement for the vacancy period in an amount of up to 3 months rent and for, this is what I had included, a percentage of the cost of hiring a consultant to conduct a lottery and openly and fairly market the unit. So again, for discussion or thoughts, I gather. And then the maximum funding, we'll be discussing further. Let's see. I just added in the next paragraph, it's talking about the it's a long paragraph. The specific amount to be awarded will depend on the trust's evaluation of the particular aspects of each project as they relate to the established priorities and the criteria referenced in this document and the trust's evaluation instrument and point allocation system, which applies to housing developments containing, and I had inserted 10 or more housing units, because that is the piece where we talk about the inclusionary component. And with that, we don't normally do an evaluation for units or for projects less than 10. So that was just clarification. For projects where the evaluation and point allocation systems are applicable, the application, and in what I was adding, is must receive an average point score of at least 65, not including bonus points, to be considered for funding. So that's up for discussion. Let's see.
I'm sorry. Wendy, please.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to know how other communities rate their applications, or other trusts rate their applications. Do we use a similar process? And not expecting this answer at this meeting, but I would like to know more about that.
Okay.
I can answer that, a similar process and evaluation, but how you apply those points and what the amount of those points is the discretionary piece.
Right.
Community housing in the next piece. This is now referring to community housing, which is above 80% of AMI. The potential funding for community housing may be up to, and previously we had said 50,000. So I thought you might want to discuss what that amount will be, and the maximum for projects of community housing previously had been 500,000, but you may want to discuss that further. And again, the last piece is the total amount of funding for that category for development.
Yep.
And then I guess we will be probably going through the evaluation forms at some point. Then what I had added, simply, this is the piece that's kind of to allow for programs. I added a section that says request for programmatic support. And I had included the application would be different from a development application. So we'd have to have a new application form and probably a different evaluation process. So I guess that's, I'll just stop there for consideration of things we might need to think about in the future, or how you want to.
That's great. I appreciate that. I know I kind of put you on the spot to walk through all of that, but I thought we had some time. It'd be good to get out there. And then if folks, as we noodle through this and in the upcoming meetings, if there's comment, they'll be able to engage on it. Wendy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just was wondering what the time frame for amending this document ideally would be.
Well, I don't think that we can put anything out until the new year, just based on the funding's not going to be available. Does that make it, is that a logical target in January perhaps? Or is that, yeah.
If I could, I would suggest definitely you want to make sure that you have your new funding fully available. And I apologize for not recognizing the 30-day delay in the process there. But the current NOFA is just, it's out there, it's on a rolling basis. And I know Chair Els had mentioned that he was concerned that policy decisions were, we are still making policy decisions, or I should say, we're making decisions that are slightly different from what you previously had printed as policy or practice.
Understood. We definitely want, at any opportunity, to try and clarify and make those decisions before a individual project comes before us, and we're trying to combine the policy and the approval of a project. I get that. Laura, you had your hand up?
I was just going to say, obviously the section on request for programmatic support needs to be fleshed out as to what's eligible and what isn't. Understanding that there are certain, if it's rental assistance, it's approved, but if it's for social services, it's not. It can't be used. And if it's down payment assistance, there has to be a restriction because it's a interest in real estate, and that usually makes it not viable. So just so we know what we can do and what we can't.
Great, thanks for that. Mark Mellon.
I just want to throw it out there for the group to think about. I think it's necessary to have limits per unit, or at least targets for us to work with. But maybe we should consider not limiting ourselves to a dollar amount by category or project, because that could then handicap us as far as what we could participate in. But dollar limits per unit, total dollar amounts by programmatic area, supply side, demand side, something to think about. Just wanted to throw that out there.
I agree with you, Mark. I think we want to remain as nimble and flexible as we can. So, okay. Any other comments for Jillian? All right, thanks again, Jillian. You want to move on to your second topic?
Second topic is 4B on the agenda. It was just the continued discussion of potential program funding and including rental assistance. So again, just acknowledging that people have expressed interest in a rental assistance program. And I would like, with the chair's permission, at the next meeting, to have Donna Kalanick from the town of Brewster come to speak to you about the program that they do for rental assistance. It would give you an opportunity to ask people who are currently doing that, if you would like, or.
I'll ask the other board members. Is that something that we would like to have at the next meeting? Sure. Everyone says sure. So please, Jillian, add it to the agenda. Make it happen.
Good. And then also,
Mark Mellon, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jillian. Mark Mellon.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I'm just curious, when you invite her, I'd like to hear, like, what's the limitation on a program like this? Because obviously we can't do it forever. There has to be a time frame. And then what happens to the people that you're providing assistance to at the end of the funding? I'm concerned about that. So I'd like to hear if they have figured it out in those respects. I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, fantastic point.
yes, I can tell you their program is a 3-year maximum. No one can participate beyond 3 years. And I know Ms. Schufelt had mentioned that that may be enough time to get people off a wait list, but it may not. So yes, the timing of that is very much a concern. Thank you for that.
All right, Jillian, your last item.
Last item was something that Laura Schufelt and I were talking about with the guidance for fair marketing and monitoring contracts. We had spoken briefly and provided in the packet just some of our initial thoughts on that. I think probably in light of some of the complications that came up with 850, that there are a few things we'd want to include in our future guidance. And I think it's also with private developers who may have no experience with affordable housing, previous experience, that there's a piece that really should be explained to them as to how they will need to fund this, and that it's not a one-time funding thing, and it's they're just by passing the contract to someone, or in other words, contracting with a professional, it doesn't completely relinquish them from their obligations. And I guess that's something that I wanted to make sure that I can come up with some sort of a document that really explains that, because I do think that's a misunderstanding for some folks.
Okay. Laura.
In the LIP application, they have to certify that they are responsible. And whether people who sign things don't read it or don't understand, making sure that they do understand that they have the ultimate responsibility for making sure that it's done correctly. And obviously we've had a lot of problems and continue to have problems with this last unit as well. So I haven't had a chance to go back and review this, but I'll make comments. And
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jillian, I continue the conversation. I guess that bleeds into our next item, topics for future meetings agenda. Sounds like December. Once again, we're gonna have an application in front of us. We're gonna have a presentation about a potential program that Brewster's running, so that meeting is gonna be pretty full. Laura, did you have something?
I was just gonna say, I will not be here on the 1st, so
Okay,
just so you know.
Jillian, if you would, can you make a note to check well in advance for quorum issue there, and if we can figure another date out, if we need to. That'd be great.
Yes, that will be important also, particularly if Donna is coming to speak, she would.
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
And the applicant as well. I will try to keep you as abreast if whether that application actually comes in time for you. As soon as it arrives, I will be circulating it or after I've reviewed it.
So I would just offer to all the board members, keep your eyes out for an email from Jillian, potentially adjusting the date for the next meeting. Okay. Are there any topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair? All right, hearing none. Are there any other alibis, topics that we need to discuss today? Mark Mill.
We had talked about expanding the board by a couple of members. Are we going, what is the next step there? I think we all agreed that or legal counsel advised us that we need town council approval to take such action. So is this something that we're going to put on an agenda coming up?
I think that we'll need to, I'm not really comfortable putting it on the next one based on, we don't have legal here today.
Yes.
So let's get to the affirmative from legal, but that's clearly on the horizon to take a look at.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other topics? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
All right. Laura Schufelt,
Yes.
Wendy Northcross,
yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn, yes. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.